Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bassam Haddad. I am the director of the Middle East and Islamic Studies program, and I am very excited today to have another edition of the faculty profile series with our really remarkable faculty at George Mason University at the Middle East and Islamic Studies program. We are speaking today with the wonderful Heba El-Shazli and Yasemin Ipek, and I am especially excited that this sort of wraps up our program faculty profiles, and then we are going to move to more events and conversations with our affiliate faculty, our former students and existing students, and perhaps some of the administrators that are part of our support network at George Mason. So, without further ado, let me welcome Professor Al-Shazli and Professor Ipek. How are you guys?
Fine, thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you
Uh,
very much, Bassam. We are very
my
well. Thank you.
my pleasure. Thanks, Yasmin, for joining us. I know you're joining us from overseas, which is awesome. And I also apologize for my slightly under the weather voice because I am under the weather, and it's just a common cold. Everything's gonna be fine. I am excited to continue our journey by starting with asking you these basic questions that end up taking us to really wonderful journeys. And I will start with Hiba, and I will ask you, Hiba, about your research and publications. If you can tell us a little bit about what you're working on, what you've been working on, and what you are looking forward to work on in the future, and any publications you want to mention, we are happy to share with our audience.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Really, it's a pleasure to be with you. Look, I've always been fascinated with civil society and the different aspects of civil society and how it relates or interacts with the government. And also the business community. So, sort of the different aspects of governance. And, the Middle, and I focus on the Middle East. So, the Middle East has always been, I always say it's a gift that keeps on giving in the sense of problematics and challenges. So most recently, I've worked on a chapter that focused on the left wing or political parties in general and how stunted their growth is under authoritarian governments, and how many times they actually get co-opted and cannot fulfill their true nature, their true mission in life. Something in the future that I hope to work on is a concise one place where you can learn about government institutions as well as civil society for Palestine. I teach a course every other year because I always need a break. It's very mentally challenging on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And plenty of research and resources in terms of Israel, but yet for Palestine, it's bits and pieces here and there. So, and of course, I'm told, well, Israel is a nation state. Well, I would want to argue that Palestine also is a nation state, yet not recognized, but it is of its people and its richness and so forth. So I'd like to put in one volume, one place where we learn about the institutions and therefore it exists because it does. So it's sort of, I'm here and therefore I exist. So anyway, that's something I'm looking at the future. And then I've always been fascinated with 1979. It is such an incredible year. And the impact that we're still dealing with until today. So anyway, just a few things here and there. And I'll stop here.
And did you want to mention anything about your publication, your book?
Oh, I have that. That's the chapter that I have in that volume about the left wing political parties and
Here it
their
is.
precisely the Routledge International Handbook of Contemporary Muslim Socio-Political Thought, and I have chapter 18, I believe.
Okay. Do you want to? Is this something you might develop into a volume?
We shall see. we shall see. I'm taking on new duties as the director of undergraduate programs
Yes,
for
I see your emails. I see your emails to me.
so for the next 2 years. So I must say, I think time is going to be a problem here. So as we would say in a very hopeful way, inshallah, God willing.
Wonderful. And let me move to Yasmin. If you can tell us a little bit about your research and what you're working on, what you've been working on, and maybe how Mason changed the sort of. Oh, I'm not even here. There I am. And maybe how Mason changed the sort of research trajectory you have had since you joined in the last few years.
Yeah, thank you, Bassam. Thank you very much. And I just want to quickly say, Hiba, I am amazed with the overlaps between our research interests. So we should talk another time, please. I am really amazed.
Absolutely.
This always happens on this podcast.
Oh, like Bassam brought two people together. I'm most interested in civil society. I'm gonna talk about it, but
No,
we should.
seriously, on every podcast, the people that we bring in together end up learning more about each other, and it ends up being a really good opportunity to network within George Mason, which is precisely why we're doing
Exactly.
this. So I'm glad you said that.
Fantastic.
Awesome, thank you so much. Yeah, so you asked actually a really good question, which is true because Mason also shaping my research interest as well. So currently I'm working on two research projects. My current book manuscript titled Crisis Work, Everyday Activism, Ethics and Class Mobility in Lebanon. It examines how the Syrian war has transformed civil society, politics, ethics, and class in Lebanon. And in the book, I look at the wider implications of diverse activist groups' responses to Lebanon's crisis. I look at how they think about crises, how they provide solution to crises, and as the crises in Lebanon never end. So for my second research project, I studied transnational Muslim humanitarianism, and this project is evolving more in the context of my involvement at Mason. This is a new project. I have been working on it only for 3 years. And I'm looking at the transnational Muslim humanitarianism in the context of the Syrian refugee crisis. If anyone in the audience is interested in learning more about these two research projects, for the first one, my article titled Bela Wasta, Aspiring Professionals, Classmaking and Moral Narratives of Social Mobility in Lebanon is forthcoming in the Journal of the Royal Anthropological Institute. And in this article, I discuss how especially young, low-income, university-educated Lebanese increasingly participated in empowerment NGOs in pursuit of social mobility and respectability. And to me, what was interesting in writing this article based on my dissertation research was to show specifically how civil society could be appropriated by precarious groups in unexpected ways, although the Western, in contrast to Western funders' specific geopolitical interests. I'm really interested in how local people are appropriating those sources. And another recent article is based on the second research project on Syrian humanitarian actors, and it's also forthcoming in the journal The Muslim World. And in this article, I'm looking at a case study of a major Syrian-led humanitarian organization in Turkey. This organization was founded by wealthy Syrian diasporan businessmen, and the article examines how class differences, market discourses, and nationalist visions shape contemporary politics of Muslim humanitarianism. And as you can tell, I'm very interested in on the topics of civil society, humanitarianism, activism, politics, ethics, and class. So this is why I said, Hiba, wow, look at the overlaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
Wow.
these are two very exciting pieces, and I showed the link where one of them will appear. So, can you tell us a little bit more about? Well, actually, let me go to the teaching part of this, and then we will go to the question of. Whoa, what happened? Okay, then we'll go to the question of research within this particular context at George Mason. Let's talk about your teaching. I do know for a fact, and I've been here 15 years at George Mason and running the Middle East program and then the Middle East and Islamic Studies program. And I'm at the Shar School, of course, as associate professor, and have the pleasure to be working with Heba in both places, at the program and at the school. So, Heba, you are one of the most hardworking teachers I have ever seen. You teach a large number of classes. Everybody that takes your classes, and we're talking about a lot of students, they come to me
Mhm.
and then they say these wonderful things to the point where it's so heartwarming and overwhelming and beautiful. So, can you tell us about your teaching and what is your secret? Why do people like you so much? I'm serious. I'm
I spent
serious. I'm not buttering you up. I'm serious. I'm
You're
I'm
too
I'm
kind.
saying the
Thank you
truth.
so much. And I was going to tease you. I was going to say I send them checks in the mail every month. No,
That's a lot of money.
I know. Oh, thank you very much. Look, I had a career, as you know, for 28 years working with civil society, social movements in the Middle East and North Africa. Actually, Yasmin, I spent time in Lebanon working with some amazing organizations. So we can talk about that another time. And so teaching is my second career, and I must say I came to it with a passion of wanting to take those years of work, and bring them into the classroom. And I tell stories. I mean, stories of places I've been, people I've met, situations that I found myself, like getting smuggled out of Iraq, with British soldiers. In the back seat to Kuwait, and then being brought back because I couldn't get out of Kuwait. So because I didn't enter legally anyway. So I have I love it, and I guess it shows. It shows, and it's the topics also in terms of dealing with the Middle East and North Africa, whether it's politics and government of the Middle East that I teach every semester, and then also Islam and politics is another course that are sort of my two mainstays. But thank you very much. I hope I've answered your question.
Sorry. Yes, but you also teach a number of other classes,
Yes,
including
yes,
the government and politics of the Middle East and so on.
yeah.
So, can you tell me before we move back to Yasmin? Can you tell me how has the recent environment, the public health problem pandemic,
Mhm.
how has it affected your teaching? Whether it's about the online matters or how students have been responding to it, uh,
Right.
and I will add one more topic. How have the recent uproars and uprisings and protests and new discourse or a revamped discourse on questions of race and gender affected the classroom in terms of the awareness of students? So, both the public health issue and the new discourses on social justice, how have they affected your teaching
Right.
at George Mason?
Thank Yes, I mean, in terms of I had to revamp my courses. I had to learn. I've learned a lot about online teaching. It's very deliberative, meaning everything has to be deliberate in the sense of what you put online for the students. It has to be clear. I must say, I realized how much I used to get away with in-person classes. The preparation for online is much, much more intense. And I've been very lucky. George Mason has offered me my own personal instructional designer. And we meet every week. I'm in a program for 15 weeks to kind of improve and make my courses less clunky, I call them, and much more accessible and so forth. In terms of the uproar, the debate that is taking place in the United States, particularly, it comes up every once in a while with some of the students' questions. They want to know what's going on in the Middle East. For example, the George Floyd incident. There were several. I asked my students every week to post a photo or an article about something relating to the Middle East, relating to a particular topic. One student found a photo of a painting of George Floyd on a big, massive rock somewhere in Syria. And she was very excited that in Syria, with all the turmoil, they were aware of some of this situation, this challenge in the United States. So, so the world is very small, and it comes up even when we're talking about the Middle East and North Africa, relating the United States situation and debates we're having here to also the region.
Wonderful. I'm still having problems with the mute button, which yep, it's another one of our issues during COVID. So that is really interesting. I've talked to, of course, all the other faculty about this particular topic, and everyone had a lot of things to share. I am taking notes, and I really like what you said about the importance of being deliberate and intentional about what you put on the syllabus, as opposed to before where yes, you were a bit too critical of yourself, saying you got away with stuff. But it is true that without the personal connection, there's no leeway. There's no
Yeah,
room for ambiguity. So
yeah,
that actually is a great takeaway. Thank you so much for this. Yasmin, if you can tell us your own experience with teaching and in relation to these two issues, the question of public health question, and also the new discourse on social justice, specifically race and gender. And I know that the topics that we deal with always include this material, not least some of the topics you work on regarding migrations and whatnot. How has your experience been? Did it enhance your teaching? Because I'm just learning that we are all learning to do our job better as a function of these crises and movements.
Thank you, Bassam, and thank you so much. You are really raising amazing questions, and I believe exactly pandemic and all the protests are shaping our teaching as much as research. Definitely is an interesting question. So for teaching, I mean, I really feel lucky at Mason because I teach on subjects that I also research on. Globalization, anthropology of the Middle East, refugees and humanitarianism, and in particular my anthropology courses, anthropology of the Middle East and anthropology of refugees. They are well demanded and well attended. This summer I taught global capstone course titled Global Middle East, and it also went really well. And as you point out, teaching global Middle East, or Middle East can be tricky and has its own challenges. And in general, I would say I find teaching at Mason extremely rewarding. I wonder if this is a similar experience for you as well. I was officially nominated in both fall 2019 and 2020 for the George Mason University Teaching Excellence Award. The thing that I find really rewarding is not only the diversity, but also if you design your course carefully, a lot of students actually enjoy participation. In some colleges and other contexts, some teachers complain, oh, I find it hard to make students participate, especially online teaching. I do believe that if you can devise some helpful strategies, students
yeah,
love sharing their opinions on a variety of topics. So in my classes, we have a lot of debates and topics. It's kind of the instructor's responsibility to kind of stir debate. So in terms of how the pandemic and protests are impacting, so I would say, like others, I was also challenged with online education because I never taught a course online before the pandemic. Some people did have some experience before, but this was my first experience. So initially, of course, it required for me a lot of training and everything. But then in 2 months or so, I thought, okay, this is happening. I mean, it's time taking. I definitely agree with Heba. It is a lot of. I also took some classes with Stearns and other places at Mason. I think Mason institutions for helping the instructors with online teaching. But students, after a while, and instructors, we got used to it. And once we got used to it, somehow we found its own rhythm. I never did asynchronous. I'm always teaching synchronous classes. It's never as same as in-person classes, obviously. But still, I mean, I'm seeing my students. I'm requiring them to turn on their cameras unless they have another issue. And so we usually have debates. In terms of debates, I'm very interested in making sure that in all of my classes we discuss politically sensitive issues in a meaningful way. I have an extra credit for respectful disagreement. I'm trying to encourage students for respectfully disagree with each other. They know from the beginning that I am encouraging them to disagree with each other. They know from the beginning that I want them to carefully discuss the politically sensitive subjects. And both last year and this year, I am participating in a seminar at Stern's annual conference on teaching politically sensitive subjects. So this is something that I am also reading and developing myself and also trying to write. It's a very important issue. And with regard to protests, both happening globally and also in the Middle East, it's just so funny, Heba. I want to say that I'm glad that you brought up this example, because also one of my students found out that just George Floyd mural is being used by Palestinian activists in Palestine. And then they brought up, like, look at these inspirations. In some of my classes, also some students did not know. They were like, wow, really? They did not know that the Arab Spring significantly impacted Occupy movement. They are like, oh, we always think that we are inspiring them. We didn't know that they are inspiring us. So when they discuss such issues and actually see what's happening in the Arab world, Arab majority societies in the larger global South actually are shaping the Western world's activism as well, it just makes me so happy to see these kind of interactions, exchanges, and recognition. So I'm glad that you brought up this example. And I want to also say one last point about the protests. I don't know your experience, but I did find out there was something empowering about the George Floyd protests and the other anti-racism protests. More of my students became more active. I found people more open about discussions on race. So I did see that it's reflected in the classroom in a positive way, because more students are participated, more students are kind of loud about their ideas, and there's an immense politicization. And I heard this from some other colleagues as well. So this makes me happy, because this is a generation of post-September 11, kind of like growing with fear and everything. So I am seeing some politicization, even with freshmen in GLOW 101. They are just so open. And then even if they don't know before the class, once they watch a brief documentary or see some others reflecting on things, like the next week, they are just, catching up with others. So I am observing how students at ages like 17, 18, 19 are politicizing through in a productive way through our courses. So this makes me really happy. So I am kind of optimistic about how the protests are impacting our teaching.
Right. And if I may just add one small thing, I find that they participate amazingly a lot in the discussion boards, and back and forth, and a lot more than I ever got in class itself, so it's really interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Absolutely. And may I ask, before we move on, sorry, I have no idea what just happened. This is, I think I don't have an idea, but I think I know what the glitch is. So I apologize for that. Can you, before we go on, do you mind sharing a little bit about the impact of this particular set of questions on your research, not just on your teaching? And I'll start with Heba and then go to Yasemin, if you don't mind.
The issues relating to protests and
yes. How is it affecting your research, not just teaching, if at all?
Right. Well, it definitely, you have to think about being relevant. And in terms of, researching, topics, issues, puzzles, questions that are on people's minds and on students' minds as well. So I think it has that sort of overall effect. And then also sort of going back in history and finding threads that bring you to today. So, and that maybe some things are not so incredibly new, that we're just seeing them in a different context. So I'm just going to kind of speak about it generally. Maybe Yasemin has something more specific.
I would say generally kind of similar in the context of Lebanon, because I did my fieldwork between 2012 and 15. Obviously, a lot of things have been changing in Lebanon with regard to activism and civil society. Lebanon is a very vibrant society, especially with regard to activism. Not only 2019 protests, but the ongoing protests and changing configuration of civil society and independent politics and activism. I did some new, unfortunately, I could not go to Lebanon, but I did some new interviews over the Zoom and Skype, and I did actually figure out that some people who were not as politicized as before are being politicized. So similar to what has been happening in the US in the context of anti-racist protests, in Lebanon, I would say there is an increasing politicization, especially among the Middle East civil society activists who would not usually go to protests. They started going to protests. So I would say there is more politicization. There is also kind of new trends of leftism emerging. I don't know, Heba, this is your topic area to emerging in Lebanon, and it's exciting to me to see that people are involving in different collectives, and there's of course a growing criticism of NGOs, and people are forming their own local initiatives and grassroots and collectives, and this is all exciting. So yes, I think what is happening is impacting our communities that we are researching with, and in turn it's impacting my own research and writing too. So for instance, in the past I wasn't acknowledging a lot of agency to my interlocutors, but recently when I'm rewriting, I'm thinking more in terms of certain things, in terms of agency, in terms of what people are doing as a social imagination and political imagination. So with regard to what has been happening in Lebanon, for instance, I became more interested in the concept of political imagination and how people are coming up with new ideas instead of reproducing existing structures of sectarianism. And this is kind of the major literature on Lebanon. So yes, I think what has been happening in the real world is personally inspiring my research and writing as well. Thank you, Bassam, for raising this research, because you remind all of us that it's a dynamic field. The research is not ending, it's continuing, and it's shaped by what has been happening in the world. So thank you for reminding us.
And it's also very much a part of what why we do research, as far as many of us are concerned. I mean, in the end, we're doing research. There is a message behind it, and when and the message has to do with the world, and when the world changes, the message gets affected. Maybe not right away. I'll be honest. Some people teach matters or topics that are not necessarily related, and they try to relate them, but it doesn't affect them as much immediately. But maybe in future times, or in a different course. And this is how I've been getting these responses that, hey, now this is what I'm doing. But there's this course that I used to teach a while ago, and its relevance has shot through the roof at this point, and I'm going back to doing, to teaching it, and to offering it, and to suggest that I teach it. So this is excellent. The last round of questions has to do with your activities beyond the school that have to do with research, academia, or any forms of social justice. Basically, some of the things that it could involve service to the profession, whatever it is you'd like to share with us as to what you do outside the realm of the classroom and your immediate academic research.
Okay. Thank you. Again, another wonderful question. Well, as you might know, I have a hobby on the side, in the sense of taking literature from the region and using that literature to better understand the region, the Middle East and North Africa. So I have been teaching now for the last 5-6 years at a wonderful independent bookstore named Politics and Prose. And now we've been doing it online for the last 1.5 years, and it's been incredibly popular. I just finished a series of 5 classes about the Ottoman Empire, 600 years. And the thing is there is literature, novels. There's even detective stories that feature Kamal Pasha, in the late 19th century, by Jenny White. There's one in particular, The Sultan's Seal. Absolutely delightful. You read this novel and you get involved and immersed, and you learn so much about life during that era, life in the court at the time, the Ottoman court, and so forth. So I have been taking novels like Naguib Mahfouz, the Nobel laureate from Egypt, and you read his novels and you learn so much about Egypt because he was such an incredible social observer, and of the good and the bad and the ugly, even some of the warts within Egyptian society that you want to just kind of go and hide from and say, really, did you have to point that out? So anyway, so that's what I do for fun.
That's awesome. If that's what you for fun, I think it's awesome. And yeah, we look forward to more engagement with you. As with all our other faculty, this is something that has been creeping up with these conversations. That there is a need for us to talk more with each other. George Mason is used to be a commuter school. Now it's changing, but it
Mhm.
still can afford a little bit more uh, activity and collaboration and engagement between faculty. So we're hoping this will be one of the results of these conversations. Yasmin, tell us about your extracurriculars, and I know that you are in Turkey, and there must be something going on.
There were a lot of fires. You must have heard them, and we are still not able to control them. And but they are hopefully okay. Yes, it has been a crazy month for I think all of us, and the COVID cases are rising and everything. But I look forward to being back in the United States and wearing masks again. So, Hiba, I am amazed with the whole novel thing because it's also one of my favorite hobbies, and I have been reading a lot this summer, and it's just so refreshing not to read academia but to read novels. Really, between us, I just believe novels kind of teach kind of more than an article or an academic book. Not, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to say
I
anything bad
understand that. No, I
about
understand.
but I just personally learn more from a novel in contrast to an academic book. So I love novels, and I'm part of two reading groups. One is in Arabic, and the other one is in English about reading novels, and they are going pretty well. And I think one of the good things with the whole COVID thing was this whole online reading group suddenly flourished, and
Yes.
I was participating in any of them before, and I knew that they were happening, but they weren't as common as maybe before. So I did start participating in some novel discussion groups, and this is great. I also enjoy hiking, and when the weather is nice, it's one of my favorite activity to go to hiking, and it's also COVID free, hopefully. So I try to meet with friends for hiking, and yeah, that's pretty much. I love reading, I love hiking, I love meeting with friends and loved ones, and I hope we can do it more in the soon. I just quickly want to advertise two student initiatives on campus that I am a faculty advisor for. They are really doing a great job. One is called STAND. It's an on-campus branch of the National Student-Led Movement Against Genocide and Mass Atrocities. And the other one is called Safe Haven. It's again a Mason-based student initiative for providing mental health programs for refugees and immigrants in the local community. I know a lot of Mason students are interested in issues of migration, refugees, and also mental health and social justice. So if you are looking for a Mason student community to get involved in, I would strongly recommend that you can consider these two initiatives. It's just every time a student emails me that we are doing this and that, I am like, wow, like Mason students, even though most of them are working part-time or full-time, they still find time for on-campus groups and activism. This is really so great. I'm so proud of our students.
It is. Me too. Me too. Amazing, amazing students.
That's wonderful. Yes, we do have something really special at George Mason. The students are great, and they were also awesome in the 80s because I was a student in the 80s at George Mason. Except that there were
That's
four buildings.
Can I quickly ask, when you were a student, were you involved in any student-based organization on campus?
Student.
Any student organization or student-based initiative when you were a student at Mason?
Ha 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 ha. Was I involved? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was involved in a lot more than I was more than just involved. I mean, we were doing a lot of work,
Oh, wow.
especially that during that time I mean, it was the first Palestinian Intifada, the invasion of Iraq in 1990, 91, the
Mm,
occupation of Kuwait, of course, prior to that. It was really heavy. It was very heavy, and it was heavy at a time when the public mood and the public opinion on questions of the Arab world and Palestine were such that if you speak out, it's a big deal. Whereas
Mm,
mm, yeah,
today, you'll
yeah.
find many similar opinions that we were like chanting in the Washington Post and New York Times. It would
mm,
have been unthinkable up to maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago, to find some of what you find now in mainstream media. It was much more difficult and much more challenging. So we had to be even much more deliberate and much more careful.
mm,
And it was horrible. It was a form of, it was living in a place where, if you spoke on matters of social justice, you won't be just maligned like you are now in some cases.
mm,
Uh, People just think you're like from another planet. And you could look at the Pew and the Gallup polls to look at these sorts of opinion polls, of course, to see why this is the case.
mhm,
Whether it's on the question of Palestine or any other matter, it was a whole different world. Today, oh my God! I mean, we have a serious shift
mhm,
throughout the United States in terms of public opinion. However, in terms of many institutions of power,
mm,
this has not kept pace. But you know how these things work historically. There's a time lag, and
right,
hopefully there will be a point where questions of social justice are also reflected to a larger extent
mm,
in powerful institutions. But yeah, thanks for that question. Thank you both so much. This was so interesting, and it keeps reminding me that we do need to have a forum among us, people who teach at George Mason University, to learn more from each other. Is there anything else? Any last parting words you'd like to share? We'll start with Hiba and then go to Yasmin.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do, for bringing us together, and for starting some magnificent initiatives. And thank you.
تكرم عينك. Thank you, Hiba, for being the engine and the intellectual dynamo that you are. Thank you so much.
Similarly, Bassam, I want to just thank you so much for including me in this wonderful initiative. This is a great initiative. I was only able to watch some of them. I'm going to watch all of the podcasts that you shared with us. I am so happy to be part of this, and I hope we can continue with more of such, either forums or other initiatives. And thank you for leading this. This is amazing. I'm so happy to be
Thank
part of it. I'm
thank you.
so happy to learn more about Hiba.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Yasmin. And I remember when you were hired, I was very excited because of so many things that you are bringing, that you were going to bring and you are bringing to our program. And I hope to continue working with you. And there's a lot more opportunity this year as we
Yes.
revamp and restructure our program to do quite a bit, actually. And I wanted to also say that every time I finish these conversations, I promise that we will have a forum, a faculty forum, in which we address research on the region, but it'll also have a byproduct of getting us to know each other more and learn from each other more. So I promise that I will work on this with everyone's help. Everyone's been really remarkable, and I look forward to working with you and hopefully seeing you in the corridors of an actual building this semester. Okay, take care.
Thank you. Best wishes. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Yasmin, take care.
Bye.
Good night.
Good
Bye
night.
bye.